Hi, we're going to spend a little time today talking about phonemic and phonological awareness. As we move through the slides, you'll have an auditory record of the walkthrough that I do about this process. So, as we know, in the early 2000s, the National Reading Panel was convened, and they did a cross-country collection of data about what was really needed in order to be a reader. And so they ascertained the following 5 categories. So phonemic awareness, phonics, vocabulary, fluency, and comprehension. I'd make the case that there is one that was left off that should have been added here, and that was oral language skills, because babies from birth, and some would argue even before birth, are able to recognize their mother's voices, hence be able to pick up her talking and the cadence. And so we're hoping that by the time that children come to school, we would really start with those early literacy skills. We're hoping that they have an understanding of syntax, the way that we string words together here in English. We're also hoping that they would have an understanding of some semantics, which is vocabulary that they'd hear adults using around them. And we hope that they have started to understand phonology, the sound systems of the English as we use it. Okay, so phonemic awareness is an understanding about sounds. Then you go on to phonics, vocabulary, fluency, and comprehension. So the framework for reading, when we talk about the framework for reading, you do have to be able to figure out the words on the page. So, I mean, that is a critical piece of all of this. And so word recognition can, show itself in a number of different phases. If I just give you a word in print, you're going to have to look at that word. Do you recognize any parts of it? Do you recognize the letters? Can you figure out from that word on the page, that single word on the page, what the word says? Now, sometimes you can use comprehension or your wealth of background knowledge about what the story is about that's going to help you to make better word choices when presented with an unknown word. And then finally, as we go along, we do spend a lot of time or some time in the primary grades teaching kids about sight words. So sight words are words that are high frequency words. And so in the preschool, kindergarten, first grade, and maybe up into third grade, we do word lists. And so the word list could be Fry word lists, they could be Dolch word lists. And if you look at a list for primary kids, you would find that, gee, some of these words they will be able to read, they just don't have the phonics skills for it. And so fluency is the next category we talk about. And fluency is the automaticity that you get when you're really solid with a skill. And so fluency has got a direct correlation to comprehension, because children that are not, laboring over what the words say on the page are better able to take in all the other nuances of a story and what's going on. When we talk about academic language, so academic language are going to be the words of school. And so we do want children to have a pretty solid vocabulary, but we also want them to understand the words that we use here in school so that they can do well academically. And then comprehension strategies, there are a number of these, and they look a little bit different from a fiction text to a nonfiction text, and teachers will routinely model these comprehension strategies so that when children are reading independently, they have a pretty good idea about how it is they're going to go about understanding what a story is about. So when we talk about phonology, this is one of the words that you get when you talk about reading. So phonology is the study of sound. Phonetics, and these are all sound like they're an F at the beginning, but they're all a PH. Phonetics is the way we actually move our mouths to make the sound. So phonology is the study of sounds. And again, that's one of the 3 things that I hoped that children would come to school with some experience in. So if you are talking to your baby, obviously they can't answer you back, but they're hearing the intonation of your voice. They will start to make connections between, if you want to say you want to go for a walk, like your dog, they eventually will figure out, oh, we're going to go out in the carriage, and they'll get all excited. And so we want them to be able to understand the sounds of the English language. Now, we generally say that we have individual sounds here are phonemes. We generally say that we have between 40 and 46 phonemes that in the English language. And I would say that a safe thing is to say that there are 44 sounds that we use to make up all of the words that we speak. Now, interesting fact is that I just had a grandchild myself, and we're all English speakers. So over time, Seared is going to learn to recognize the words, the sounds that we use to make up words in English. But if he had been born in Holland, where his grandfather is from, they have another whole set of phonology. So they have a different sound system there. So when babies are born, it's just a luck of the draw about where you are born. Wherever babies are born, they will be able to recognize the sounds of the language that they hear most prevalent. And so whatever language is spoken at home, so it's possible that here you could have parents that are immigrants, or that maybe the primary caretaker might be the grandmother, and she never really learned English, and so she is with the baby 10 hours a day, and she's speaking German to them, or she's speaking Spanish to them. So children are going to come to recognize the phonemes of the language that they hear primarily spoken at home. So when we talk about this, we want them to understand sound, we want them to understand sequence, and we want them to understand vocabulary. So this is the first of the PH sounds, words. So here we come to phonological awareness. Now you can hear this spoken about several different ways. So phonological awareness can be, it's talked about the phonological continuum, or you might hear it talked about as the phonological umbrella. I usually talk about the phonological umbrella because phonological awareness is actually a two-step kind of a thing. The flat-out phonological skills are larger chunks of sounds. So it would be number of words in a sentence. The cat runs. Can you hear where one word begins and the other ends? Rhyming, if I give you the words cat, sat, and mit, which one of those words doesn't belong? And then it would be syllables like tomato. And then you might have onset and rhyme. So onset and rhyme is going to be a word like black, where you have a word like black, where you have the onset are the sounds that come before the vowel, and the rhyme is going to be the ack that comes at the end. And so those would be the larger chunks of sounds, and then we move on into the phonemic section of phonological awareness, and we get to that phonemic section of phonological awareness, then you're going to get into individual sounds. So the first of those is initial, second is ending, and the last is medial. So if I have the word cat, I ask you what the initial sound is, you're going to tell me it's k, k, k. If I ask you about the ending sound, you're going to say it's t, t, t. If I ask you about that medial sound, it's going to be ah. And then we're going to move on into blending and segmenting. So if I said to you, k, at, are you able to hear those sounds, be able to put those sounds together and give me the word cat? The other flip side of that is to be able to segment. I say the word cat to you, what sounds do you hear in the word cat? And it's going to be k, at. All of those little breaking that down into individual sounds are phonemes. Then it comes to the hardest of these phonological skills, phonemic skills, and it's going to be the substitution and deletion of sound. So if I say the word flit to you, it, and I tell you I want you to take out the now you have to remember what I said to you. You have to do the process that I said, and are you going to come up with the word fit on the other end of that? The second half of that is to do substitution. So again, I'm going to give you the word flit, it, and I'm going to ask you to take out the I sound, and I'm going to ask you to substitute in an a sound. And so now you have to think about what sounds I said, and then you have to do the process that I asked you to do. Take out the I and put an a in that. Will you be able to get to flat? Those two last, about substitution and deletion. Those are harder of the phonemic skills. They're going to require that you have a pretty good phonemic memory. And so as a result, those might not be firm until the end of first grade, possibly going into second grade. I also want to, you'll hear the term phonological and phonemic used interchangeably. Realistically, it should be referred to as phonological awareness. Phono means sound and logic means to think about sound. But in that phonological continuum, you get to a little section that's called phonemic awareness, and right in the middle of that word phonemic, you see one. And that's the difference between phonological awareness and phonemic awareness, is that phonemic awareness is only one sound. So when we talk about this continuum, you say, well, it's all phonological awareness. I want you to think about a rectangle. So envision a rectangle. When you think about a rectangle, you've got two sets of parallel lines and four right angles, and that makes it a rectangle. But then if you think about a square, that too has two sets of parallel lines. That too has four right angles. But the difference is that if you're having a square, all the sides have to be the same length. And so I can say to you, are all squares rectangles? Well, yeah, they are. But are all rectangles squares? Well, no, they're not. So when you talk about phonological awareness, you're talking about the big picture, starting way back, and you hear where one word begins and the other one stops, and going all the way to the point of substitution and deletion, which means that you're manipulating sounds. Now, children this skill needs to be solid because they need to be able to recognize individual sounds in order to go that next step into phonics and match the sounds to letters. The big thing to remember when you're talking about phonological awareness is there are no letters. The teacher isn't going to hold up the word cat and say, what sounds do you hear here? The teacher might hold up a picture of a cat. What is this a picture of? A cat. Can you tell me what sounds you hear? And the child may say, cat. But if I hold up the picture of the cat and I ask you how you spell cat, that is no longer phonological awareness. As soon as anybody's got any letters or I'm asking you for letters, we've gone on into phonics, because as soon as there are letters, we've gone on to phonics. So when we talk about here, and I said that there's going to be a lot of words, here's some more. So phoneme, and here you see that letter 1 in the middle there. So this is a phoneme. We talked about the big umbrella of phonological awareness, and we talked about that smaller section that is the phonemes, and there is the word there. And it has the word 1 right in the middle of it. So phonemic awareness is your ability to discern individual sounds within words. So if I gave you the word chip, so the word chip has got 4 letters in it, but the thing is that chip has a digraph in it. So that's CH. You don't hear the k and you don't hear the h. You hear a ch sound, and that can't be split up. So in the word chip, although there's 4 letters, there are 3 sounds, ch, ip. But you could have the word flat. There are 4 letters there, and because the full at the beginning is a blend, I hear all of those sounds. So if I asked you about flat, you're going to tell me that you hear f, at, and that is what you'd hear with flat. Okay, and we're going to stop here because I think I've done my